Folsom's unforeseen interruption. The roar hit Johnny like a physical force. Folsom Prison exploded with cheers, whistles, and stomping feet as he stepped onto the makeshift stage. The California sun beat down, glinting off the steel bars and the sea of faces, hardened, scarred, desperate faces. He gripped the microphone, feeling the familiar hum against his palm. "Hello, Folsom," he drawled, his voice thick with a practiced twang. "I'm Johnny Cash." The response was deafening. He launched into Folsom Prison Blues, the irony of the moment not lost on him. The song vibrated through the prison yard, a raw anthem for men trapped within these walls. He poured every ounce of himself into the performance, connecting with the audience in a way few others could. He was halfway through Cocaine Blues, his fingers flying across the guitar strings, when he saw her. A flicker of movement near the perimeter fence, where the razor wire gleamed menacingly. A woman. She wasn't an inmate. She was dressed in a faded floral dress, her hair a tangled mess. Her eyes darted around, wide and unfocused, like a trapped bird. A knot tightened in Johnny's stomach. She was too close to the fence, far too close. The guards were focused on the crowd, keeping an eye out for trouble, but they hadn't seen her. He strummed a chord a little too hard, the sound jarring against the familiar rhythm. His voice faltered for a fraction of a second, barely perceptible, but he felt it like a tremor. He tried to refocus, to keep the song going, but his eyes kept drifting back to the woman. She took another step closer to the fence, her hand reaching out as if to touch the electrified wire. A collective gasp rippled through the front rows of the audience, a ripple of fear and morbid curiosity. Johnny could see the tension in her shoulders, the way she trembled. This wasn't just a curious onlooker, this was someone in distress. He finished the verse, his voice strained. As the band launched into the instrumental break, he leaned into the microphone, ignoring the disapproving glare from Warden Davies, who stood stiffly to the side of the stage. "Hold up a minute," Johnny said, his voice cutting through the music. The band stopped abruptly, the silence amplified by the sheer size of the crowd. All eyes were on him, a mix of confusion and anticipation on their faces. "There's a woman over there by the fence," he said, pointing. "Looks like she needs some help." The crowd shifted, craning their necks to see. The guards finally noticed, their faces hardening as they moved towards the woman. Warden Davies hurried forward, his face a mask of disapproval. "Cash, what do you think you're doing?" he hissed, his voice low but sharp. Johnny ignored him, his gaze fixed on the woman. She had frozen, her hands still outstretched towards the fence, her eyes wide with a terror he recognized all too well. "Ma'am," Johnny called out, his voice gentle but firm. "It's all right. Just take a step back, okay? Everything's gonna be all right." Rose Finley heard him. She wasn't sure what he said, but she felt the warmth in his voice. She felt the genuine compassion from him, and her eyes caught his. She stared at Johnny, and she felt like she was no longer in danger. A song of compassion. The crowd's frenzy ebbed as Johnny attacked. Orange Blossom Special. Usually, his ferocious performance ignited them, but tonight his gaze strayed, pulled towards a woman clinging to the perimeter fence. Frail as a sparrow, with hair like a neglected nest, she pressed against the chain link, knuckles bone-white. Warden Davies solidified beside him, his expression an unreadable mask of granite. "Ignore her, Cash. Just a disturbed soul. She makes the rounds now and then." A chord from Johnny felt jarring, a discord in the bluegrass tapestry. "She looks in agony, Warden." "Agony?" "She's a nuisance. Hurls debris, shouts at the sentries. Don't give her encouragement." Davies' voice, a low growl of command. "Keep playing, Cash. That's your purpose here." Johnny nodded, but his fingers felt clumsy, uncooperative. The lively tune felt like mockery in the face of her visible pain. He finished the number, the ovation ringing hollow. He risked another glance. Now she was consumed by sobs, her frame shuddering. He reached a decision. A raised hand silenced his band. A ripple of confusion stirred the assembled. Davies' eyes tightened, a silent warning flashing within. I want to dedicate a song to someone who needs it, Johnny announced, sincerity lending weight to his words. He disregarded Davy's sharp intake of breath. Switching to his well-worn Martin guitar, he coaxed forth a simple, gentle progression, a soothing balm of sound. It wasn't a known piece, but sprung from a place deep within, empathy whispered into music. His baritone was low, a comforting murmur, the lyrics homespun and direct. Hush now, little one, don't despair. A new dawn breaks through the air. Let your sadness fade away, find the sunshine in the day. There's hope waiting, come what may. He held the woman's gaze. Initially, no response. Then, gradually, almost imperceptibly, her shoulders loosened. The racking sobs diminished to ragged breaths. Lifting her head, her red-rimmed, haunted eyes connected with his. A spark of recognition, perhaps only a reaction to the kindness in his tone, flickered there. He continued his song, the melody weaving its solace. Tension coiled in the air. The guards stood rigid, unsure of protocol. The inmates, initially perplexed, fell silent, captivated by the raw emotion pouring from Johnny's soul. Even Warden Davies appeared momentarily softened, the harsh angles of his face relaxing almost imperceptibly. As Johnny sang the concluding verse, she took a hesitant step back from the fence, then another. Tears still flowed, but the hysteria had broken. She stood a few feet away, simply listening, her body finally still. When the final note dissolved, an almost tangible quiet descended. Then, slowly, tentatively, applause bubbled to the surface, swelling in volume and fervor. Not the boisterous cheers of before. This was different. This was gratitude given voice. This was understanding offered and received. This was something profoundly more. Beyond the bars. The bass thrummed, a low vibration against Johnny's sternum, a counterpoint to the wild cheers. He should be feeding off the energy, riding the wave, but Rose's face was etched in his mind. He finished. Ring of Fire. The final chords echoing out over the crowd, a bittersweet victory. He dedicated it to her, hoping she'd heard, hoping it had reached her through the wire. Backstage, the air hung thick with cigarette smoke and the scent of stale beer. He found her by the chain-link fence again, closer this time, almost touching. The guards eyed him warily, but he waved them off. Rose, he said softly, kneeling so he was closer to her level. Can you tell me what's going on? Her eyes were red-rimmed, the pupils dilated. She clutched the fence, her knuckles white. They don't understand, she whispered, her voice hoarse. They say it's all in my head. Johnny frowned. Who says that, Rose? Everyone. My family, the doctors, they just want to lock me away. A tear tracked a path through the grime on her cheek. They give me pills that make me feel like I'm floating, but the voices are still there. He recognized the desperation in her voice. He'd seen it in the faces of men broken by war, by poverty, by life itself. What kind of voices, Rose? He kept his tone gentle, encouraging. Telling me I'm no good. That I should just disappear. She shuddered, pulling her threadbare coat tighter around herself. I try to be good, I really do. But it's so hard. He learned then, in fragments, between sobs and frantic whispers, that Rose had been struggling for years. Diagnosed with something the doctors called schizophrenia, medicated into a stupor, then abandoned when the medication didn't fix her. Her family, overwhelmed and frightened, had turned away. She was alone, adrift in a world that didn't understand the storm raging inside her head. The knowledge settled in Johnny's gut like a stone. He'd sung about the forgotten and the downtrodden, but here, right in front of him, was a soul drowning in plain sight. He couldn't just walk away. He reached out, carefully placing his hand over hers on the cold metal of the fence. Her skin was clammy, her fingers trembling. Rose, he said, his voice thick with emotion. You're not alone. I promise you, you're not alone anymore. The words hung in the night air, a fragile promise against the roar of the crowd and the hum of the generators. He didn't know how he would do it, but he knew, with a certainty that resonated deep within his soul, that he would find a way to help her. He had to. The haunted look in her eyes wouldn't let him do otherwise. June's helping hand. The roar of the crowd faded as Johnny stepped off the stage, the echoes of Ring of Fire still buzzing in his ears. He felt a familiar ache, a hollowness that even the adoration of thousands couldn't fill. Tonight, though, the feeling was sharper, laced with worry. Rose's face, contorted in distress against the chain-link fence, haunted him. He found June backstage, humming a gospel tune as she meticulously packed away her autoharp. The scent of her rose perfume, a comforting anchor, filled the small space. "Hey, darlin'," he said, his voice rough. June looked up, her eyes crinkling at the corners. "You were on fire tonight, John. They loved you." She paused, noticing the furrow in his brow. "But something's eaten at you." "What is it?" He told her about Rose, stumbling over the words, feeling foolish and inadequate. "She needs help, June. Real help. Not just a kind word and a pat on the back." June listened intently, her expression softening with each word. When he finished, she reached out, taking his hand in hers. Her touch was warm, grounding. "You did the right thing, Johnny. You always do. You saw someone hidden, and you reached out. Don't you ever doubt that." "But what do I do now?" he asked, the anxiety knotting his stomach. "I don't know anything about what she's going through." "We'll figure it out together," June said firmly, her voice radiating confidence. "First, we need to find someone who does know. Someone who can help her get the care she needs." She squeezed his hand. "Remember Dr. Reynolds? The psychiatrist who spoke at that benefit dinner last year? He seemed like a good man, and he's local." Johnny remembered vaguely, a man with kind eyes and a patient demeanor. "Yeah, Reynolds, you think he could help? It's worth a try, isn't it?" June was already reaching for the phone. "Let's see if we can get him on the line." She dialed the number, her brow furrowed in concentration. After a few rings, a voice answered. June explained the situation briefly, her tone urgent but respectful. Johnny watched her, relief flooding him as he listened to her side of the conversation. "Yes, that would be wonderful, Doctor. Anything you can do." "Thank you so much." June hung up the phone, a small smile playing on her lips. "He's willing to meet with us, Johnny. Tomorrow morning. He said he's familiar with cases like Rose's." The weight on Johnny's chest eased a little. "You're an angel, June. A real angel." "Don't be silly," she said, but her cheeks flushed pink. "We're just doing what we can. Now let's get you something to eat. All that singing must have worked up an appetite." She steered him towards the catering table, her arm around his waist. As he ate, he couldn't shake the image of Rose, but this time, it was mixed with a sliver of hope. Maybe, just maybe, they could get her the help she desperately needed. He had June, and that made all the difference. A long and winding road. The roar of the crowd faded as Johnny stepped off the stage, the lingering vibrations of Ring of Fire still humming in his chest. He wiped the sweat from his brow, but the image of the woman near the fence wouldn't leave his mind. He was bone-tired, yet a knot of worry twisted in his gut. Dr. Reynolds, a woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, sat across from Johnny and June in her small, book-lined office. "Rose is distressed," she said, choosing her words carefully. "She's exhibiting signs of severe anxiety and delusional thinking. I believe she needs intensive psychiatric care." Johnny leaned forward, his brow furrowed. "Can you help her?" Dr. Reynolds nodded slowly. "I believe so. But it will be a long and winding road. There will be setbacks, moments of frustration, and times when you question whether any of this is working." She paused, looking directly at both of them. "This isn't a quick fix, Mr. Cash. It requires unwavering commitment and a realistic understanding of the challenges ahead. Are you prepared for that?" June squeezed Johnny's hand. Her voice was steady and calm. "We are, Doctor. Whatever Rose needs, we'll be there." "Good," Dr. Reynolds said, a hint of relief in her voice. "We'll start with a comprehensive evaluation and medication to stabilize her. Then, intensive therapy. She outlined the treatment plan, emphasizing the importance of a structured environment and consistent support. It will be a marathon, not a sprint. The care facility was a world away from the bright lights and roaring crowds Johnny was used to. It was quiet, almost sterile, with the faint scent of disinfectant hanging in the air. They found Rose sitting by the window, her gaze fixed on the distant trees. She seemed smaller, more fragile than Johnny remembered. June knelt beside her, gently taking her hand. "Rose, honey, we brought you some things." She opened a bag, revealing a soft, hand-knitted blanket in shades of blue and green, a worn copy of Little Women, and a small bouquet of wildflowers June had picked from their garden. Rose's eyes flickered to the gifts, a flicker of recognition in their depths. "Flowers," she whispered, her voice raspy. Johnny pulled up a chair, his presence filling the small space. "June thought you might like a little bit of home." He cleared his throat, feeling awkward and unsure of what to say. "We're here for you, Rose. Every step of the way." Rose looked at them, her expression unreadable. Then, slowly, a single tear traced a path down her cheek. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. As they left the facility, June slipped her arm through Johnny's. The weight of the day settled heavy on his shoulders. He knew Dr. Reynolds was right. This was just the beginning of a long and difficult journey. But looking at June's unwavering gaze, he knew they wouldn't face it alone. They would walk this winding road together, one step at a time. Glimmers of hope. The stadium vibrated, a physical force pressing against Johnny as he launched into Folsom Prison Blues. The song's reliable cadence was an anchor in the storm of cheers. But tonight, the throng dissolved into a single, haunting image, Rose, pinned against a chain-link fence, her eyes reflecting a terror that clung to him. The lyrics felt hollow, the melody a ghost. Was she safe? Had she found a moment's peace? Did she even remember to eat? Backstage, June's hand found his. "She's heavy on your heart." He merely nodded, the concern a tangible burden. "I can't shake what I saw, June." "Not like that." Ever practical, June offered a steadying reassurance. "Then we won't let it go. I spoke with Dr. Ayres again. He sees progress, however gradual. Regular visits, he feels, would benefit you both." The following afternoon painted a gentler scene, Rose on the sanitarium porch swing, her attention lost somewhere in the stretching fields. Though cleaner, her hair neatly framing her face, the haunted look remained a shadow in her eyes. "Hello, Rose," June offered, her smile gentle and tentative. Rose's gaze flickered, recognition blooming slowly. You came back." Her voice was a fragile rasp. Johnny leaned against the porch railing, respecting her space. "We promised we would." A weighty silence settled between them, thick with unspoken anxieties. Then, Rose's almost inaudible voice cut through it. They say it was all in my head. The voices, the threats." June knelt beside the swing, her presence a grounding force. "What do you believe, Rose? Imagined?" Rose's brow furrowed, a spark of defiance flickering in her eyes. "No. I know what I heard. I know what I saw." A shiver traced her spine as she clutched her thin shawl tighter. "They want to hurt me. They're always watching." Johnny's voice was soft, coaxing. "Who is, Rose? Who's watching?" Her eyes locked with his, brimming with raw, desperate fear. "Everyone. They're everywhere." She huddled into herself, a desperate attempt to shield against invisible assailants. The following weeks shaped into a routine of visits. They arrived bearing books, flowers, small comforts intended to erode her isolation. Sometimes they simply sat in quiet companionship. Slowly, hesitantly, trust began to blossom. She tentatively explored her terrors, the relentless voices, the sensation of unseen eyes, the feeling of being stalked. She mentioned a shadowy figure, always just beyond her grasp, whispering indecipherable threats. One afternoon, Dr. Ayres greeted them after their visit, a rare smile lighting his face. "She made a remarkable stride today. She participated in group therapy, something she's resisted staunchly since her arrival. She even shared fragments of her childhood, however briefly. Small victories, Mr. and Mrs. Cash, but genuine progress. A weight seemed to lift from Johnny's shoulders, a beacon of hope piercing the gloom. He glanced back at the porch, where Rose sat engrossed in a sketchpad. The road ahead remained long and arduous, but for the first time, he dared to believe she might, indeed, reclaim her light. Echoes of recognition. A gravelly voice, broadcast from the common room radio, sang a tune Johnny barely recalled laying down in a studio. He downed another glass of water, his parched throat raspy. It was Folsom Prison Blues. A grim choice played for the 5th time this week, the irony a dull ache in his gut. He surveyed the inmates' faces, each a testament to lives weathered by regret, wondering if any spark of hope remained. He couldn't abandon the attempt to connect. Across the compound, in the hush of the women's ward, Rose sat motionless, gazing at the downpour blurring the world outside. She hadn't uttered a sound for days, her thoughts lost in some internal maze. Dr. Reynolds, a beacon of calm, rested a hand lightly on her arm. Then, a vibrant guitar chord sliced through the quiet. A plaintive harmonica followed, and Johnny's voice, imbued with yearning, filled the space. "I hear the train a-comin', it's rollin' round the bend." Rose's forehead smoothed. A flicker ignited in her vacant eyes. Her lips moved almost imperceptibly, as if coaxing out a forgotten phrase. The song resonated, a tide drawing her from the depths. A ghost of a smile played on her lips, the first sign of life in weeks. Dr. Reynolds tightened her grip, her eyes glistening with understanding. It was a pivotal moment, evidence that the music, that Johnny's empathy, had touched a place beyond the reach of medicine. "That's it, Rose," she encouraged softly. "Listen." Unseen in the doorway stood Warden Davies, drawn by a persistent unease, a responsibility he couldn't shrug off. He'd initially dismissed Johnny's bold gesture at the fence as imprudent. He'd witnessed too much deceit, too much pandemonium. And yet, here was Rose, responding to a melody, voiced by the very man he'd nearly banned. He observed her face, the subtle change, the nascent smile. As the song faded into static, its echo lingered, a tangible presence. Dr. Reynolds turned, her gaze meeting Davies's. She offered a small, knowing smile. "Music therapy has shown promise," she stated carefully. "But this is different. This is a personal connection." Davies nodded slowly, absorbing the scene. He pictured Johnny, once again on stage, pouring his soul into his performance for an audience of hardened criminals. He considered Rose, adrift in her isolated world, now momentarily anchored. Perhaps there was more to this than met the eye. Perhaps there was power in the simple act of extending a hand, or offering a song, to someone in need. A feeling stirred within him, a reluctant respect for the man he'd almost written off. He turned and left, the rain still drumming against the pane, the echo of recognition reverberating in his mind. Beyond the concert, the last chord of Folsom Prison Blues still vibrated in the air, mingling with the roar of the crowd. Johnny, sweat plastering his hair to his forehead, didn't immediately leave the stage. He scanned the faces, a sea of them blurred by the stage lights, searching. There, by the perimeter fence, a solitary figure remained unmoving. Rose. He gave a curt nod to his band, signaling the end. The applause thundered as he walked off, the energy of the concert fading with each step away from the stage. He bypassed the waiting reporters, his publicist sputtering in protest, and headed straight for Warden Davies' office. Davies, a ramrod straight man whose face rarely betrayed emotion, looked surprised to see him. "Mr. Cash. A fine performance." "Thank you, Warden. I need to see Rose Finley." Davies hesitated, his jaw tightening. "She's back in her quarters, Mr. Cash. She's fragile. The concert, the noise. I understand. I just want to make sure she's all right. And to tell her, well, to tell her I'll be back." The warden studied him, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. He finally nodded. "Very well. But keep it brief." Rose was sitting on the edge of her bed, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Her eyes, usually so vacant, held a spark of recognition. "Johnny?" she whispered, her voice raspy. He knelt beside her, taking her hand. It was cold and thin. "Hey, Rose. You okay?" She managed a weak smile. "The music, it was nice. I'll be back to see you, Rose. I promise. Even after we leave Folsom." He kept his word. The tour ended, but Johnny's visits to Folsom didn't. Every few weeks, he made the drive, a beat-up guitar case in the back of his Cadillac. He'd sit with Rose, sometimes singing, sometimes just talking, listening to her fragmented stories. He brought her small gifts, a wildflower picked from the roadside, a brightly colored scarf, a book of poetry. One afternoon, after a particularly moving rendition of "Give My Love to Rose," Warden Davies approached him. This time, the sternness in his eyes was tempered with something akin to gratitude. "Mr. Cash," he said, his voice unusually soft. I underestimated you. And Rose. Your visits, they've made a difference. She's calmer, more lucid." He paused, then added, almost reluctantly, "The doctors are seeing progress. Real progress." Johnny just nodded, a lump forming in his throat. The change wasn't just in Rose. Word of Johnny's continued visits spread throughout the community. People who had once shunned Rose, crossing the street to avoid her, began to offer small acts of kindness. A neighbor brought her flowers from her garden. A local church group started collecting books and puzzles for her. The stigma that had clung to her began to loosen, replaced by a hesitant, fragile understanding. The world, it seemed, was capable of a little more compassion. A song of gratitude. The bass resonated deep within Rose, a welcome tremor that banished the last shivers of old anxieties. Years. The bridge, that precipice, felt like lifetimes ago. Therapy, meds, a slow, arduous ascent, all leading to this. County fairgrounds, a flimsy barrier, anticipation buzzing for the man in black. Stage lights erupted, a momentary solar flare. Then, he materialized. A collective hush descended, punctured by excited cries. "Folsom Prison Blues!" ripped through the air, his voice a rugged current sweeping everyone along. Rose's eyes fluttered shut, the music engulfing her. The memory surfaced, sharp and stinging, the frigid air, the bleakness. Then, his voice, a lifeline in the abyss. He noticed her, truly seen past the despair when others averted their eyes. His set flowed, a tapestry woven with gospel fervor, country grit, and rebellious anthems. Each song a narrative, each note a tribute to human resilience. She swayed, the music a portal, the memories vivid. During Ring of Fire, his gaze traversed the crowd. For a heartbeat longer than chance dictated, it rested on Rose. A spark of recognition, a phantom smile. He remembered. Her breath hitched. Why would he? She was a face lost in the thousands he encountered. But he did. A tidal wave of emotion crashed over her, nearly buckling her knees. An immense, unyielding gratitude. He had rescued her. Not merely from that bridge, but from the self she'd been teetering toward. He'd offered hope, a reason to keep fighting. And she had. The applause thundered as the song concluded. Johnny stepped closer to the stage's edge, his eyes scanning the audience once more. His gaze locked onto Rose. A subtle dip of his head, barely perceptible. An unspoken acknowledgement, a shared history. He understood the weight of that night, its lingering impact. He struck the initial chords of A Boy Named Sue. The atmosphere shifting, lightening. Rose laughed, a fragile, genuine sound. She was present. She was breathing. She was thankful. The music surged, saturating the night. A private serenade of thanks. She silently echoed the lyrics, her heart overflowing. Thank you? Thank you? Thank you? The remainder of the concert blurred into a sensory rush. As Johnny Cash performed, Rose remained anchored, no longer poised on the brink, but firmly planted on solid ground. The ground he'd helped her unearth,